Dear all, distinguished guests, I welcome you to our first afternoon panel entitled What Do We Know About the Armenian Genocide? New Trends in Research. Our panel consists of three researchers, Mr. Mark Sherman, Dr. Stefan Ihrig. I hope I pronounce your name. Where are you, Stefan? Here. Was that right? Okay. And Professor Ayan Akhtar. Each participant, as you shall soon witness yourself, delivers a different angle on the Armenian genocide. I'm certain the upcoming lectures will illuminate us, both students, researchers, and the general public as well. Our first speaker is Mr. Mark Sherman. Mark Sherman is currently Director of Information Resources at the Institute of the Holocaust and Genocide in Jerusalem. He is also Head Librarian at the Harry S. Truman Research Institute for the Advancement of Peace at the Hebrew University. He served as Director of the Holocaust and Genocide Review as part of the GPN, Genocide Prevention Now, Internet Magazine project at the Institute on the Holocaust and Genocide, Jerusalem. Mr. Sherman's lecture title is The Armenian Genocide, the Building of a Descriptive Index to Major Newspaper Compilations between 1890 to 1922. Mark.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In this short presentation, I will show how a descriptive index provides the best approach when indexing newspaper accounts of the Armenian massacres and genocide between the years 1890 and 1922. Although it is complex to build, the descriptive index is user-friendly and a great enhancement to students, researchers, and educators in their study of the Armenian genocide. The New York Times coverage of the Armenian genocide is only the first in a multi-volume series which will include other leading US newspapers covering the years 1890 to 1922. The time frame chosen for these articles covers the prelude to the three main periods of mass killings: the Hamidian massacres from 1894 to 1896, the Adana massacre of 1909, and the genocide of 1915, as well as the aftermath of these massacres culminating in the introduction of Soviet rule in Armenia. The articles selected for these volumes are not limited to genocide, but also show the political picture of the time, as well as the vibrant life of Armenians who lived outside of the genocide zone. Now, these are the other newspapers that will be covered in the whole series, aside from the New York Times. And when I began to work on the index of this project, I felt like I was in a time machine, sent back to that period of time. And every morning when I woke up, I received my daily newspaper with those articles in it. Okay. There's no doubt that the Armenian genocide is a well-documented horror, with many outstanding publications having compiled collections of newspaper coverage. For example, Richard Clorian's pioneering book, first published in 1980. That's Dr. Heike Demoyan's recently published book on front-page coverage in the world press, as well as Reverend Ohanian's news reports from the international press, the precursor to the current project. This table shows the number of articles chosen from the New York Times each year between 1890 and 1922. Between the years of 1894 and 1897, the first peak in documentation was seen. This can be attributed to major massacres and unrest, seen by the international community as perhaps newsworthy due to its horror factor. Public awareness of the phenomena of mass killings up until then had never been readily available. With the advent of telegraphs, as well as on-site missionaries and diplomatic councils, the awareness of the Armenian tragedy was easily conveyed through the press. The second and more obvious peak is seen here during the actual years of genocide in 1915. It's interesting to note some of the terms used to describe the Armenian tragedy in the New York Times articles during the years of coverage in the volumes. Please remember that the actual term genocide was not coined until 1948. Some of the terms included are unparalleled savagery, revolting tortures, atrocities, 1.5 million Armenians starve, policy of extermination, and deliberately exterminated. Many of these terms we can see used still today. Okay. In the descriptive index, we limited our selection to highlight major personalities, including high-ranking government officials and diplomats, major subject terms, organizations, and geographic terms, including villages and towns that experienced massacres. Over the next few slides, I will illustrate examples of each heading as it appears in the text and the descriptive index. Each of these entries includes a glossary that describes the entry. The descriptive index entries were constructed based on how the term appears in the articles. This is not an index. This is an index that is not simply a compilation of page numbers, but is carefully constructed to enrich the reader's experience and understanding of the subjects of these volumes. Okay. On the left, we see a newspaper account taken from the New York Times in October 8th, 1916, page 1228 of our volume. The New York Times volumes themselves is 1,800 pages at the height of the genocide. On the right, we see the index entry, correspondence to Lord Bryce, page 1228 to 1229. On the other side, we see the corresponding text of the article. The corresponding text of the article, where it says there, rights, Gray writes, Viscount Gray writes to Lord Bryce, and here's the indexing term that corresponds to that article. And in reverse, you see under Lord Bryce's name, it has correspondence from Edward Gray with the same page numbers. Okay. The next slide shows the. Okay. Here is an example of how a subject, Ambassador Morgenthal's own story, appears in the text and its descriptive index entry. This indexing entry of page 1332 to 1335 is actually a review of the book. And this is the corresponding first page of the book review. Okay. Organizations played a significant role throughout the Armenian genocide, often to raise relief funds to send to the region. The American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions was the leading missionary organization in the region. So here you see an article that mentions about the death by poison of Reverend Francis H. Leslie of Northport, Michigan. And you see the corresponding indexing term under the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions. Okay. Here is how a geographic term appears in the text and is indexed in the descriptive index. Here you have a massacre that took place in Hassan Kala, in which an Armenian monastery was sacked and burned. And you have the corresponding indexing terms under that village name. This is some thoughts for future projects. I think it would be very interesting when this project is finished with all the newspaper compilations that we can have a better understanding of how the Armenian genocide was presented to the person on the street who read the newspaper. And we could actually see how it was presented in New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Washington, D.C., and in the Christian Science Monitor. I haven't seen an analysis of that before, so this could be very interesting. One of the major problems we had was the spelling of cities, of towns, which differed depending on who reported the article. So we would have to develop an accuracy and standardization system. And then we can also look into other newspaper accounts throughout the world as to how the Armenian genocide was prevented. My library at Hebrew University subscribes to the Japan Times, which is a very well-established English newspaper in Tokyo. And I searched for Armenian genocide, and I received a lot of information that I did not find in the New York Times volumes. And then we can even apply this to other genocides to see, again, how the genocide was portrayed in the newspapers and how people in the street would read those articles and understand what was happening in the world. Okay, thank you.